In the previous segment of the Electric Soul series, the focus was the number one, the initiating force. Across multiple symbolic systems, the number one consistently expressed the same essential property, a radiant energy pushing outward toward a goal. It was active, directive, and visible. The number two is very different. Where one possesses a clear identity, two exists largely in relation to something else. Its nature is reflective, reactive, and often paradoxical. To understand the number two is to understand opposition, balance, and the subtle forces that shape reality from the shadows. The number two is far more complex than the number one. In many traditions, one is the initiating principle, while two emerges as its complement. In Taoist philosophy, this relationship appears as yang and yin. Yang, the number one, sets the direction and defines the movement. Yin, the number two, forms from whatever yang is not. Because of this, two does not begin with a fixed identity. She becomes the counterpart, the balancing force, the field that receives and moderates the energy of one. This relationship gives two a difficult role. In the world of pure unity, she acts as the shadow force that breaks apart the dominance of one and restores duality. In this sense, she must oppose the first principle in order to maintain balance. In the philosophical structure of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, the number two appears as the antithesis, the necessary counterforce that challenges the original idea. Within the four-element model, the number two corresponds to air. Fire represents light, visibility, and radiant energy. Air, by contrast, represents darkness and containment. Its function is to surround fire and regulate its intensity. In the great simulation of existence, the Maya, there is a limit to how much radiant energy can exist in any point of space. When that limit is threatened, time itself slows to dissipate excess energy. At that moment, the force of two enters the system to neutralize the expanding charge of fire. This produces a profound inner contradiction. Fire's goal is to be seen. Air's goal is freedom. Fire rules the daylight world of radiance and visibility. Air governs the night, the hidden and unseen realms. Yet air exists primarily to restrain fire. Her role is service, but her deeper impulse is liberation. For this reason, the number two always carries a subtle double message: loyalty and independence existing simultaneously. At the atomic level, the element of air appears as the electron. Electrons are the creators of action. They determine chemical bonding, electrical flow, and the reactions that build the material world. Although two may appear secondary, merely reflecting the energy of the nucleus, its real power lies in its ability to disappear. In the world of pure duality, two represents completion. Nothing remains unresolved. Because of this, two approaches zero, the void. When the electron leaves an atom, it creates a vacuum that demands immediate correction. Other elements rush to fill the imbalance. This disappearing act is the fundamental mechanism behind chemical reactivity. What seems passive is, in reality, the trigger for transformation. Symbolically, two represents the most feminine of the numbers. It is associated with diplomacy, sensitivity, and cooperation. Gentle, tactful, forgiving, and understanding. Two naturally seeks harmony and prefers to avoid confrontation. Yet this peaceful nature has limits. In Greek mythology, the dynamic between Zeus and Hera mirrors the relationship between one and two. Zeus represents the dominant initiating force, while Hera embodies the protective counterpart. Hera is loyal and devoted, but when betrayed or threatened, her anger becomes formidable. She defends what is hers with relentless determination. The number two shares this dual nature, peacekeeper on the surface, but fierce when provoked. An interesting paradox appears in the behavior of air when it incarnates as helium. Within atoms, the electron is extremely active, yet helium, the element associated with the number two, appears chemically inert. Why? The answer lies in two different worlds: chemistry and alchemy. In chemistry, helium is stable and inactive. In alchemy, however, helium appears as the alpha particle, a powerful indicator that a nuclear event has occurred. Alpha particles are helium nuclei, stripped of their electrons. They are unstable and quickly attract electrons to form a neutral helium atom again. In large, unstable atoms undergoing decay, these particles are expelled from the nucleus. Radiation detectors register their passage as the familiar clicking of a Geiger counter. If the nucleus, the domain of fire, begins to decay, the force of two leaves immediately. Inside every atom, air performs a silent duty, shielding the radiant force of fire. But the moment that fire loses its purity, the protective force withdraws. In the system of the I Ching, the number 2 corresponds to the trigram representing the mother. Here, 2 is reflective and supportive, complementing the creative force of the father, represented by the number 1. The mother does not initiate the movement, but nurtures, sustains, and completes it. Within the periodic system, the second chemical row contains the alkaline earth metals, including magnesium and calcium. Magnesium plays a critical role in biological processes and is essential for cellular health and healing. In many ways, it expresses the nurturing aspect of the mother archetype. Calcium, by contrast, forms the structural barrier of life: bones, shells, and protective structures. It represents stability and protection. Together, these elements reflect the protective and sustaining qualities of the number 2. In astrology, the number 2 corresponds to the sign Taurus. Taurus represents stability, determination, and persistence. Once a Taurus sets a goal, it rarely abandons it. This sign is known for patience and the ability to build lasting structures. The symbol of Taurus, the bull, captures this strength and resolve. Governed by Venus, Taurus also carries the themes of beauty, love, and material creation. Taurians often possess strong artistic and engineering abilities. They excel at turning visions into tangible realities. The myth associated with the number 2 is the story of Psyche. Psyche was so beautiful that no mortal man dared approach her. She was eventually chained to a rock as a sacrifice to death, but death arrived in the form of Eros, the god of love. Eros carried her to a hidden palace, where she lived in luxury under one condition: she must never try to discover his true identity. Curiosity overcame her. When Psyche revealed his face, Eros disappeared, and she was cast out to wander in search of herself. The goddess Aphrodite then imposed 4 difficult trials. Only by completing them could Psyche reclaim her true identity. Like the number 2 itself, Psyche's journey is about discovering who she truly is, not merely in relation to another, but as a being in her own right. There's another way to understand the number 2, through geometry. In geometry, 2 creates the line, yet the line itself is still invisible. It is not a surface or a form. It is simply a relationship between 2 opposing points. At each extreme of the line sits a force pulling in opposite directions. This relationship is what we call an opposition. In astrological symbolism, this opposition can be illustrated through planetary forces. If the Yang principle is represented by Mars, the Yin principle can be represented by Venus. Imagine a line that begins at one extreme with pure Mars energy, direct, assertive, and active, and gradually moves along a spectrum until it reaches the opposite extreme of pure Venus energy, receptive, harmonious, and accommodating. Every possible balance between those 2 forces lies somewhere along that line. Now, place this principle into the structure of the astrological wheel, which contains 12 houses. These houses represent the full range of relationships and situations that a person encounters within the simulation of life. Within each house, there exists this invisible Mars-Venus line. In one house, the individual may naturally operate closer to the Mars end of the spectrum. In another house, their expression may fall closer to the Venus side. Across the 12 houses, the balance between these two forces shifts depending on the circumstances of that particular field of life. Ideally, the goal is flexibility. The individual learns to allow the situation itself to determine whether the appropriate response is Mars, direct action, or Venus, diplomacy and cooperation. However, astrology also reveals that this balance is not always fluid. There are certain houses where the response tends to repeat in the same way again and again. These are often referred to as karmic houses. In these areas of life, the individual may unconsciously default to one extreme of the line, always Mars or always Venus, regardless of the situation. The deeper purpose of these houses is not immediate balance, but awareness. The lesson for the player is to bring consciousness to that house. Once awareness enters the system, the individual can begin to move freely along the line, rather than remaining fixed at one extreme. Only then does the true potential of the number 2, balance through opposition, become available. The number 2 reveals a fundamental truth about the universe. Balance requires opposition. Where one radiates outward, 2 surrounds and moderates. Where one seeks visibility, 2 operates in the unseen world. Where one initiates, 2 completes. Though often perceived as secondary, the number 2 quietly governs many of the most powerful transformations in nature, from atomic reactions to mythological journeys of self-discovery. Without the presence of 2, the universe would remain locked in the singular radiance of 1.
The High Priestess. She is the still point, unmoved, untouched, complete within herself. She is purity, not as something fragile, but as something whole. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing can be taken away. Like the helium atom, balanced, self-contained, without reaction, she exists in perfect completion. Before her burns the fire of one, active, reaching, becoming. It seeks to move, to change, to transform. But she does not answer it. She does not resist. She does not engage. She does not become involved. She simply sees. The fire may rise or fall, it may intensify or fade, but she remains exactly as she is, a silent witness, a presence without reaction. In her there is no disturbance, no division, no pull toward action. She is awareness without participation, observation without interference. The fire exists, and she knows it, but she is not of it. She is the High Priestess.
It is the subtle power of opposition that creates movement, relationship, and ultimately, the unfolding drama of existence. In the next segment of the Electric Soul series, we will explore the number 3, the force that resolves the tension between 1 and 2 and brings synthesis into creation.
If you get anything out of these videos, please leave a comment, subscribe, and tell your friends. Until next time, remain curious.